Hi, Sister Leaders community. This is Dr. Karen Hills Pruden, the founder of the Sister Leaders community, and we have another podcast guest leader. I am so excited because we have none other than the wonderful Dr. Roberta J. Wilburn, who is going to tell you all about what she do in this space called life. And we're just going to have a very candid conversation about what she's doing and moving around, any products and services that she has, and how she has made an impact here on this earth, because we know that the world could not turn without sister leaders. And so the next voice you hear is none other than Dr. Roberta. Dr. Roberta, welcome to the Sister Leaders podcast.
I am so excited to be here because I'm all about sister leaders. I'm all about empowering sister leaders. I'm all about making sure that our voices are heard and that we have spaces where we are accepted, where we're valued, and we can be elevated.
Awesome. So we know that, surface looking, that most women, we are very complex individuals, even though people can't tell that by looking. So tell us a little bit about what you do. Who are your ideal clients if you have clients, or who you serve. If you have a business, the name of your business and what problem you address as your business. So tell us about the sister leader businesswoman, Dr. Roberta.
Well, I've been in business for a long time. I guess I am one of those serialpreneurs, like they like to say, because I've had multiple businesses before. Although for a long time, I spent most of my career in higher education. So I spent 35 years in higher education and other type of businesses. But I have a business with my husband, and we've been in business for 5 years now, going on 6 years, and we have a diversity consulting business where we work to make sure that individuals have the skills necessary to build cultural relationships where it's about trying to bridge the gaps. There's so much that divides us, but what we're trying to do is bring people together so that they can excel in a diverse and inclusive world. And I developed a framework called my Get Real framework about diversity, equity, and inclusion, because I said it's time out for all of this fake stuff. It's time for us to get real. If we're saying that we're going to be about diversity, equity, inclusion, then we need to be about diversity, equity, inclusion. It's not about just holding up a picket sign or going to a protest. It is about putting in the work. And so I really like to work with people who are serious about doing the work, who really want to learn to be more effective in communicating and working with people from diverse cultural backgrounds in effective ways. And so that's kind of what we do. We do consulting, we do coaching, we do diversity training, and we do cultural events. Like right now, we are in the process of preparing for our annual Kwanzaa event, because it's also about educating us about us. Because too often, society has tried to sanitize or marginalize our history, but our history is very important. So, an important part of what we do is providing that truth.
I love that. And girl, you are rocking down my lane, because I am a certified diversity executive,
All
and
right,
we
now.
know we got something to talk about here. So my first question to you is, why does the word diversity make so many people uncomfortable, to the point where even in business people don't like to use the actual word diversity? Why do you think that is?
Because I'm just going to be transparent and blunt with you, because white people don't like to feel uncomfortable, and it makes them feel uncomfortable. And I feel comfortable talking about white people because for the last 15 years I have worked with white people at a white predominantly white university, and I loved it. It was actually the best place that I've worked, and I've worked at HBCUs, and all. It has been the best place I worked. So, but I understand the culture, and there's a fear there because they believe that, unfortunately, that if you talk about diversity, that you're going to call them a racist, that they're going to they don't want to get into the discussions because they're afraid if they get into discussion they may say something that may be offensive, and they don't want to offend anybody, so I'm not going to talk about it. And then they were raised to say, colorblind, I just love everybody, we're all the same color. And I was like, look, I'm standing in front of you, I am a Black woman, you can see that I'm a Black woman, you are not colorblind, okay? And so trying to help them to understand that when you say that you're colorblind, you are really offending me in the sense that you are denying my history, my ancestry, and who I am. So I tell white people,
Absolutely.
no, we're not going to say that. That's old. We
Absolutely.
don't do that anymore.
I love that. Absolutely. So do you think that I have experienced and working, and ironically, the majority of my career, going on 30 years, have been in predominantly white employers. I'm currently employed at a HBCU, but that's
Which
been
one?
the last three years. Well, I won't say their name on this podcast, but for
Okay.
the last 3 years, I've been at a HBCU. But prior to that, I have worked at predominantly white institutions and companies. And do you think that there is a fear that talking about diversity, implementing diversity initiatives, which we'll talk about in a minute about how to do that, there's a fear that diversity is a replacement as opposed to inclusion? Because I have experience where there's a fear that diversity initiatives are a replacement, meaning that you're going to switch out an individual for another individual, when it is more of, really and truly, it is the most powerful diversity initiatives are those of inclusion of individuals who either are part of your customer base, your community base, but it's more of inclusion instead of replacement. What are your thoughts in terms of that statement, the fear of replacement?
It is. It is. There's a fear that um I'm going to lose my job. I'm going to not have the same um ability to get ahead that I used to get ahead. And so then there is a lot of focus on, well, they're only here because they're here because they're Black, not because they're qualified.
Mm-hmm.
And not realizing that diversity adds to the effectiveness of an organization, not detracts from it. And so it's really important to understand that as we are getting more diverse, if we embrace diversity, everyone wins and everyone can benefit from it. But if you keep hiring people that just look like you, who just think like you, then you are limiting your ability to move to the next level of excellence, because if we all think the same, we have no one challenging us. We have no one coming up with innovative ideas or ways of looking at the world, because we're all looking at it the same way. And that doesn't produce growth.
Absolutely. And so let's talk about, what do we mean when we say diversity? Because most people directly run to race. But at least when I use the term diversity, I am not talking about race. I may be talking about generational diversity, in terms of your workforce generations. I may be talking about cultural diversity, which is different from racial diversity. I may be talking about civilian work versus non-civilian, depending on, I'm in Virginia Beach, Virginia. We are a heavily military town.
Mm-hmm.
So I may be talking about, obviously, I may be talking about gender. I may be talking about the different types of classes of positions, like your blue collar and your white collar, your formally educated, as well as those who have been educated by work experience. And so diversity is not just race. However, the hot button seems to come from when individuals immediately think, when you say the term diversity, that you're talking about race. What are your feelings about what I just said?
Well, I agree with you wholeheartedly. The way I explain it, I say diversity is the full breadth of human difference. So every single way that you could think of a way that a person is different, that's diversity. And black and white is just only a small element of that. And so it's really important for us to consider all aspects of diversity. I did a training for the city of Spokane a number of years ago. And the area where they were being the most challenged was generational, because they had so many young people coming in, and the older people who were in senior positions did not know how to supervise these millennials and the younger generation. And so we had to talk about what those differences were and why it's important. So that's an area of diversity, but a lot of times people neglect that. And then we know that ageism is a thing as well. And people forget that, as you know, I know now as we get older, that there are other things that very often, oh, we're looking at that age, I'm going to discount them. I was on a hiring committee, and someone on the committee was criticizing one of the candidates because of it had something to do with their age. And I said, no, you need to think about that. I said, we cannot discount anyone because they're too old, because they're too young. We need to be looking at the skills, the abilities, and what they bring. Will they add value to your organization?
Absolutely. And you're doing your organization a disservice if you do, because I love working with a multi-generational workforce. It is some things that I can appreciate about certain generations that, hey, have at it. Enjoy yourself. I have some younger professionals who can um, input information and create a spreadsheet with data. I'm a numbers person like it ain't nothing. They do it like it's not anything. And then I have some other individuals who prefer to do things manual for whatever reason. And believe it or not, even though we are in the world of automation where everything is automated, there are appropriate times where manual is the most efficient, and so I can appreciate having the different generations in the workforce and what they bring and what they prefer. When you spoke about people having difficulties with certain generations in the workforce, I think about how with sometimes the younger generation, they put in more hours, but it's not necessarily sitting in a desk in the office. They're working off of their phone, they're working off of their laptop, they're working everywhere. And if you look at their receipts meaning their work product, their emails, their communications, and all that stuff, you will see they are getting the job done, but it's not tied to a desk. I'm from the generation where we were taught to get in there before the boss and leave after the boss.
Right, exactly.
That's no longer applicable. And so that doesn't mean that you don't have to get your work done tied to a desk. And so appreciating and recognizing that these additional generations are working differently, they're still working though. And
exactly.
So tell me about your experience in working with individuals, appreciating the differences and how the generations work within the same environment.
Okay, and so I'll just tell you personal experience. So when I worked at the last university I was in, I was there for 15 years. When I started there, well, number one, I was the only African American professor and administrator. Okay, in the university, not in my department, in the university. Okay, so we got that. And on top of that, all of my staff, and I had a staff of about four and a half people, they were all older, meaning over 50. Okay, they were all, but they were wonderful. And they worked as, I mean, they were a well-oiled machine. I didn't have to check up on, I knew they knew their job, they were going to do it, and it was it was wonderful. Well, you know what happened after 15 years, during that 15-year time period that I was there, every single one of them retired. They all retired. Okay. So this well-oiled machine, everyone with the same generations and working with the same kind of mindset, they were gone. And so then I had to think about who I was going to replace them with and whether I was going to reconfigure their jobs and all of those kinds of things. And so then I ended up hiring more younger people. And for me, that was a challenge because I had to learn to work with them differently and learn that they were not going to respond to me the same way my more mature senior baby boomers had been responding to me. So I had to make an adjustment. And for a minute, I was like, whoa. But one of the things that I did was I wanted, the new generation, they really ask a lot of questions and they want to be involved. So really trying to make them included, involving them, asking them questions and saying, hey, I have a leadership team. And even though you may be a clerical support staff, you're on my leadership team because I can't function. This School of Education, graduate programs can't function without your leadership. So embracing that, but then also trying to embrace the difference in that they were more technology, that they wanted to, oh my God, they wanted to get rid of all the paper. And I was like, oh, wait a minute now, no, we just can't get rid of everything. Let's see what it is before we do that. So it's about me as a supervisor understanding the skills that they bring and how they operate, but then also helping them to understand me and how things may be important. And a lot of times with the millennials and the Gen Zs or whatever, they don't always see the value of some things that may have some historical significance. Yeah. So helping them to understand, hey, even though you just think this is a piece of paper, this really has historical significance. And so we're not ready to get away with it that way. So that's what, so that has been my experience. But I think I've learned to really love working with diverse groups. Mm-hmm. And I really love the younger generations, but we have to, it's about having a meeting of the minds. I have to understand them and they have to understand me, but that's with all cultures.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So how important is it for diversity and inclusion and equity initiatives to be supported, advocated, championed from the top throughout an organization? I know the answer, what my answer is to that, but I'm going to put that question on the table to you and ask you, how important is it?
It is critically important. And so that's why, as I said, I work with higher ed a lot. I work with other organizations, but I have shifted my focus to working with senior leaders. Because if you cannot get the senior leaders of an organization to embrace diversity, equity, and inclusion, and know that that's important, then it's not going to filter down to the rest of the organization. And so so that's what I do now. I'm doing executive coaching, diversity executive coaching, and I'm doing it with presidents and administrators. So right now I left the university where I was there for 15 years, but I'm still coaching the president. because he realizes the value that he still needs. He has his diversity officer, and that's fine. But when you're at the top, it's very hard to ask for insight, always to ask for insight and advice for people who work under you, because they're like, oh, he's the president, so I'm just going to say what he wants to hear. No, but if they are really serious about this work, they want someone who's going to be authentic, hold them accountable. And that's what I get all the time. My president, he says all the time, I like working with you because you hold me accountable. I'm going to come back to him and say, and what did you do? And how did you handle that? But then also, he can bring questions to me and say, what do you think about this? I'm thinking about doing this. What's your perspective? Give me, another way of looking at that. And so that's really what my focus, the two things that I'm focusing on right now is executive leadership for presidents and senior level administrators who really want to become more culturally aware and sensitive and regain their increase their skills. And then for women, particularly African American women, who want to move up in leadership, because very often we're doing the work, but we're not getting the recognition, and then we're not able to move up within the ranks.
I love that. And that is a good opportunity for me to segue into my passion, which is female leadership, specifically female senior leadership. And so how I created Sister Leaders was out of a pain point that happened in my career when I hit middle management, and I was looking for a senior female leader just to mentor me because I thought I had something to offer in senior leadership. And at that point in my career, it was about 15 years ago, I couldn't find anybody. I didn't know any female leaders. Even in those industries that were predominantly female, when you got to the C-suite, it was the boys club. And so at that point in my career, I was in middle management. What I did was LinkedIn was 5 years old, 15 years ago. And so the world was still filling it out. It didn't have the 900 million people that it have now. It literally has 900 million people on LinkedIn.
Wow.
We were still trying to figure it out, but I was on LinkedIn. I did a little bit of research, looked for an African American woman who was a vice president or higher, who had been in that position for at least 10 years, brushed up my resume because I had been with my current employer for about 14 years at that time, sent a direct message to two of my top people that I researched on LinkedIn at that time with a copy of my resume and simply asked, would you be my mentor? And then I waited. I told them in a direct message I was having I was interested in senior leadership. I didn't know anybody. I was looking for a mentor. Here's my resume. And so my number one choice responded back and said, yes, I'll be your mentor for $350 an hour. And so at that point in my career, it put me at a crossroads because it's like, okay, this was an expense and I didn't expect it to be free, but I don't know what I expected in terms of the cost. But now the cost is in front of me. So what do? So she had been in her position. She was a SVP, a senior vice president, had been in that position. I think it was about 15 years. And so I accepted the contract. I hired her for 1 hour a month for a year. 1 hour, because that's all I could afford was that extra $350. I was a mother, wife, mother of 3 children. All that was the only added expense that I could afford at that time. But she mentored me, and really it was longer than our talks were longer than an hour. She helped me cultivate my specialties to this day, which is technology and analytics. She helped me to learn how to articulate my value in numbers. My specialty is human resources and operations. Of course, human resources is not a revenue generating industry. So your budget is the first budget to get cut. And so, but she helped me to learn how to articulate my value, so that even though I wasn't a revenue generating department, I could speak in terms of my impact that I was having on the organization. And so out of that pain point in my career, after working with her for a year, I was invited to apply for a C-suite position, and I've been in senior leadership ever since then. But
so that just shows you it's important to learn to invest in yourself. It's worth it.
Oh,
And that's one of the things
absolutely.
that I try to tell our sister leaders is that
Yeah.
it's worth it investing in yourself.
Absolutely. And so that is how I'm a faith-based woman. So God
Me too.
downloaded it in my spirit, Sister Leaders. And that's how Sister Leaders was developed. It was, I wanted to create a community where we passed along experience, education, resources, and networks with one another. I wanted it to be a community, although we're advocating for female senior leaders, manager and above. I also wanted to be a community of men and women, because we are overall less than 30% of us are female senior leaders across all industries. And when you talk about diversity, it's not even double digits in terms of female senior leaders. And so we need the sponsorship and ambassadorship
Absolutely.
of men, so that they can hire our businesses, invite us into the presentations, hire our consulting businesses into these rooms so that we can show what we have, so that we can possibly increase our professional equity, so that we can be hired in those institutions where we don't have a presence. And so that is how Sister Leaders were created. So my question in regards to, I got all excited when you were talking about female leadership, is that my focus has been on transitioning task-oriented managers to visionary leaders. So my focus in terms of my individual confidential consulting has been heavily in helping managers who have worked their way up to middle management say, now that you want to be a leader, you're not thinking about the day to day. You're planning 3 years down the road, 2 years down the road, 5 years down the road. So you need to move into your visionary competencies instead of your task-oriented competencies that got you to middle management. Because those are the things that get you to middle management, but what gets you to senior leadership is your vision. And your vision is predicated on your knowledge of what your competitors are doing, your knowledge of your industry, your knowledge of all of the different changes that are coming that you foresee. And if you have the foresight to see changes that others can't see right now, that even makes you even more valuable. So how have you experienced or heard, and what are your thoughts on the difficulties of women getting into senior leadership and making that transition from that task-oriented middle manager to that visionary leader that is required in senior leadership? Because that has been what I have found have been some of the difficulties of women making the transition when they're in the interview process, because they're answering the questions associated with tasks instead of associated with vision.
And I think it is a mindset shift, and then we have to shift our minds, because we are not, we if you're in management, you're trying to put out fires and make sure things are operating, but we're not thinking about the big picture. And so it's really important to help people to get that big picture. And part of it, sometimes it's about getting them out of their comfort zones and helping them to acquire the skills that they need to give them the confidence to think like a visionary. Okay.
Absolutely.
And so, I've had a number of young ladies that I've mentored, and part of it was you need to go back to school. Your bachelor's degree is not cutting it. If you're in higher education, your bachelor's degree, you will go nowhere if all you have is your bachelor's degree.
Mhm.
But now yeah, if you're serious about doing this, then you have to get out of your comfort zone, and you can do it. You're bright, you're intelligent. Let's do it. And there are some people who, when I initially talked to them, they didn't want to hear what I had to say, but then a number of years later they came back and said, let's revisit that conversation. And they eventually went back to school, and then their career took off. So it's about helping. And then sometimes it's also about having an accountability partner. I think that is so important. And
Mhm.
for many young ladies, that's what I have been. I have been their accountability partner, to push them, to encourage them, to provide them with resources, to say, this is what you need. Let's practice this. Let's look at this differently. And I think one is too small a number to be successful. So you need
Excellent.
to find someone who you can talk to, who is where you want to be. You can't, I was looking at something and it was talking about the difference between chickens and eagles. If you're going to hang out with the chickens all the time, you're not going to soar.
Yep.
So if you want to soar to that next level, you have to become an eagle. You have to begin to see things the way eagles see things, to get that
Yep.
bigger vision and that bigger picture. And you have to be willing to put yourself out there. You have to be willing to get off the ground. And so that's one of the things that I think is so important for our sister leaders. Is for so long we have been nurturing everybody else except ourselves. And know this is our time and this is our season, and we have to pour into ourselves if we want to get to the next level.
I love that. I love that. So I have one more question, and then I will ask you to share with the Sister Leaders community what you have going on, how we can stay in contact with you. And so my question has to do with data. I am a data geek. I believe what you don't measure, it's not important to you. We value those things that we put numbers to. How important do you believe it is for women leaders to know the data associated with their industry when they're in leadership, and how do you think that they can best use the data to help them in their career?
Well, some people say the numbers don't lie, but sometimes we know numbers can be manipulated to lie. But but I think it is so important. And I found out that, and so I was director of graduate studies in education, and I started out overseeing 8 different programs, when I left, I was overseeing like 14 different graduate programs. And so one of the things that I did was, okay, what was the impact that I was having? Okay, so I could say, number one, you're seeing growth right there. If I started out with 8 graduate programs and we now have 14, that's a certain level of growth. Then what is the diversity? I can talk about the diverse. So when I started there really was no diversity within the department. I can show the numbers of diverse graduate students we've increased, faculty we've had, staff we have hired. All of those are important. And then I can also show financially the financial contribution that our department contributed to the overall university success. And those are the things that I think, believe me, got me recognized by the president. Because, when a university or any organization is struggling, and we know that, with COVID and everything, it really hurt us financially, every organization financially. And when our program can say, we helped contribute to your bottom line so that we went from the red to the black, then that gives people in higher up, they start looking at you.
Yep.
And wanting to know. I mean, I had the CFO saying, I want to know how you did what you did. So those numbers are really important. And I'll tell you honestly, I'm not a numbers person per se. I am not a numbers geek like you are. But I know the importance of it. And if you can't do the numbers, then you better find someone to work with you who can.
I love that. I love that. So share with the community how they can stay in contact with you. And if you have any events or books or anything going on, share with them. I will be posting your whole bio with this interview on all of our social media, as well as it will go out onto the YouTube channel as well. But talk about what you got going on coming up.
Okay, so as I mentioned, so number one, I'm on all social media, mostly all the platforms. I'm on LinkedIn and Facebook, Roberta Wilburn. I'm on TikTok, which is really funny. I'm like, really? And I'm on Instagram at Wilburn Associates LLC. And then also, I really want people to buy into the fact that Kwanzaa is coming up. It is an African American holiday. It's not anti-Christian because I am a devout Christian, a minister, and all of that. It is not about that, but it's about embracing our cultural heritage. And we are actually looking for people who might be poets or musicians or things like that. I am located in Maryland, but we will be also having a live stream component. And so we are looking, we are just really excited about that. We have each year we have a king and a queen that we elect, someone who's doing something in the community. And we're just really fortunate that the mayor-elect of Laurel, the first Black mayor of Laurel, Maryland, will be our king. And so we're really excited about that. And it's going to be a wonderful experience. But I also have some wonderful resources. I have a book on dealing with racial stress and self-help. I have a toolkit for that. And then I'm coming out with a book on From Strength to Struggles, help for Black women who are moving up into leadership. And so you can contact me at Wilburn Associates. I'll have to think about it myself. Wilburn Associates LLC at gmail.com. Wilburn Associates LLC, gmail.com, or check me out on social media. And I definitely would love to send you some resources. And if you contact me, I probably have a special freebie for the women because I really am about empowering you. So I have some affirmations because I believe very much that the power of life and death is in our tongues, and we have to say what we want and what we believe in. And so I really have some affirmations that I think would encourage your ladies.
I love that. And thank you so much. So this has been another episode of Sister Leaders, the podcast. And we thank you, Dr. Roberta J. Wilburn, for this spirited conversation. And if you want to hear more sister leaders who are just as passionate about what they're doing as Dr. Wilburn, then make sure you stay tuned to the next Sister Leaders podcast, which it happens every Monday. I am Dr. Karen Hills Pruden, and I bid you a good day. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks for having me.